When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Northland Sports Page. It's Brian Prudhomme. It's Dave Cook. It is Saturday. It is one heck of a sports weekend. We'll do our best to recap it, preview it, all of the above from now until noon. Dave Cook, good morning.
How are you doing, Brian?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm back.
You are back. Welcome back from your Colorado Rocky Mountain High trip. You had a good time.
Yeah, we did. We had a chance to see a lot of interesting things, catch up with the family. We got to drive a really cool car.
There you go.
This is why being nice sometimes is a plus. So we went into the budget car line.
I wouldn't know.
In the budget car line, we're like 900th in line, right? And the reason it's taking so long is every single person is bashing the agent, right? And I had one guy slam the glass door so hard that everybody looked thinking it was going to shatter. Lots of F words from people renting cars. So we got up there, and the lady was ready to fight, right? We got up there and said, hey, here's all of our paperwork. We're ready. And she stopped and she looked and she said, you're so nice, we're going to upgrade you. Well, we got upgraded, Brian. Like, we were a top end car. So we're like, oh, this is fantastic. Well, the car, we rented a Suburban, right?
Right.
And then they bumped us up to a Mercedes, which is super cool.
I was going to say, that doesn't seem of the same ilk as a non-driver. Maybe I shouldn't comment, but go ahead.
No, it's really not. Here's the thing, though. The Suburban had room for luggage for 7. The Mercedes had seating for 7. And so we ended up, everybody had a suitcase on their lap. It was like,
I was going to say, did you give the option? Some of you can ride in the car, but you can't bring your stuff.
Yeah,
what would you like to do?
That would have worked. So it was like one of those, awesome but not great at the same time things, because we got the fantastic upgrade and it didn't work for us. But by then we were already, packed and ready to go, and there were still 900 people in line.
Well, I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad you're back safely. You're easily recognized because even though you've been gone for a while, you're back in one of my favorite sweatshirts that you have. I don't know if it's in honor of NHL preseason, but you're rocking the North Stars today.
Well, we're rocking the North Stars today. We're looking good. It is a little bit of preseason, but also a little nostalgic. We're going to get into that in just a little bit here, I think.
No doubt about that. So you're wearing one of my favorite hoodies that you own. I know that one of my faithful listeners used to say, well, Brian, you had a Northland Sports Page uniform for a while, too. Do you remember I always used to wear the same navy blue Twins hoodie and shorts when we first did this show? It's a little warm for the hoodie today, but the Twins won a game last night. I had to represent the Twins with my wardrobe choice today.
They did win a game, and it was kind of funny because we're in the car coming back from the game last night, and it's like, oh, we're going to get run off. That's
exactly what I said. I said, Ronnie Enriquez is in again for a 9th inning, and they have a runner on second. We're going to get walked off because it's our new tradition.
Yeah, nope, and they came back and won that game, and they needed something to put the car back in gear.
Right.
Like, they've been in neutral or reverse for so long. They needed a jolt, right? Maybe that's it.
You can hope, because it's absolutely something to build on, but only if they go ahead and build on it. Now, you think on paper they could, because Pablo goes today, and he's been good, but he's been good even in games they haven't won. This team, for me, can't hit enough right now.
Right. I mean, Correa's back on one leg, and he's, again, their best player.
Correct.
And that says so much about where they're at right now. Nobody, you never expect everyone not to hit. Well, that's where they're at right now. Nobody's hitting at all except Correa, and he's like 3 for 4 with 3 one-legged singles.
So Carlos Correa, maybe it's still strange to even see him in a Twins uniform because he's still new in terms of the Twins portion of his career. It's good to see him in that uniform because he's healthy-ish. You said it's one-legged singles, but he's grinding it out there, and hopefully this team can grind their way into the postseason. I know some folks don't feel that way because they're so anti-Poleheads, and I totally get it.
This year they earned it.
But it doesn't make me not want to enjoy the season and hopefully enjoy the postseason. So I'm still going to root for this team, whatever Twins uniform they put on. I hope they scratch out a victory. And if you've noticed, I've used the term uniforms quite a bit because that's part of our opening topic today, because we touched on the Twins because they're in the thick of a pennant race. We're going to do more than touch on the Vikings because we hope that they can stay atop a division and see just how far they can race in this NFL season. But it's going to be a little bit strange on Sunday because whether you're the Texans or whether you're the Vikings, if you're looking at the opposite sideline, you're going to find enough guys where you're going to go, hey, wait a minute. Didn't we used to be teammates? Because you've got Stephon Diggs. You've got Danielle Hunter. You've got Cam Akers. You've got Blake Cashman. You've got Jonathan Grenard. I probably missed a few. There you go. There's one more. But
they signed Irv Smith. Houston signed Irv Smith Jr. the other day.
So just that alone, I mean, this is, hey, don't we know you type of weekend for the Vikes.
Is it true to say, or at least close, that if Irv Smith plays on Sunday, that he will have played in just about as many games with Houston as he did with the Vikings?
It's probably close all the time. If he logs a couple of quarters, he's right there.
Yeah, exactly right. So no, it'll be fun. I think it'll be fun for both teams. I want to ask a question before we get started.
Sure.
I asked you this last night, and I think it's something we should talk about. And is that will the fans boo Stephon Diggs?
Well, you wanted to ask me that question, and I said hold tight because it's going to come up and by yourself.
Will the fans boo the other one, Danielle Hunter?
No.
He's going to go in the Ring of Honor, right?
I would think so, because here's the thing. I don't imagine them booing Danielle Hunter. Now, it might change if he gets to Sam Darnold, and all of a sudden Sam Darnold's on the shelf for the season, and we're watching the Nick Mullins show. But I think Danielle Hunter's still pretty well respected here. Now, it was interesting because of the money that he made, but it's not Kirk Cousins level where it's, oh my gosh, we're wasting so much money at this position. And I also think that Danielle Hunter, sure, there was frustration, but who's it towards? Because when I think of Danielle, I think of, it was just a tweak, and then you miss the entire season.
Yeah.
But Danielle never said that. Mike Zimmer did.
Yeah, no, I think that it's going to be very interesting to see how we respond. And I hope we respond well. And frankly, I think the Vikings have a real shot here because we'll find out where CJ Stroud is in the current pantheon of starting quarterbacks, because he's seen some of Flores' stuff, but I think Flores has a wrinkle for every team all year long. We'll see how he does.
We will. The one thing about Flores and this defense that I like is it's positionless, in the sense that anybody can do basically anything, because Flores will have guys coverage, blitzing, doesn't matter, different guys coming from different angles, what have you. But I'm curious how that translates when the actual personnel changes, because the fact that Ivan Pace will not be playing.
That's a big one.
The fact that Dallas Turner will not be playing. I don't know how big their role is. Obviously, Pace with the green dot guy, you figure that's a big deal. Important. Turner's a rookie, in there, not in there, but does the beat go on or not?
Well, I think in Turner's case, you're just going to see more Jones. And so that's
right.
And
so far, that's not a bad thing at all.
He's played very well. And it'll be interesting to see who the fourth guy is. If they just have it be the great big guy, Khalil, Ward, right?
Jihad Ward.
Jihad Ward.
They call him Hottie. I'm not going to.
Yeah, no. I
don't know him that well.
Because he is so big and so quick, he can play all of the positions on the front. Or if they bring up one of the kids off the squad, whether that be Andre Carter or if it's the kid from Air Force who went nuts in the preseason, one of those two guys could come and maybe put a little bit of pressure on. But I think the more important one we just talked about was Ivan Pace, because who are you going to run in there? You're going to run Brian Asamoah, who seems to have lost all traction in the NFL, but he's the closest type of player to Pace.
So we will see what change of pace the Vikings defense has when they take on the Texans. I'm just trying to get it back on the rails because we were off the rails a little bit. Speaking of the rails, quick recap of high school football last night as well. Proctor did not play. They had a lack of healthy kids. So I think it went down as a forfeit. They were supposed to play Two Harbors. I misspoke last night. I mentioned Cloquet. That's who Proctor will play next week.
Got it. Yeah, it's that the Proctor program is really in the middle of a rebuild. And they're so young, and if they don't have a full complement, you just can't run, a team of 9th graders and 10th graders out there against the varsity team. They're just going to get beat up.
And speaking of getting beat up, Duluth East got beat up a little bit last night at Duluth Denfeld. Denfeld is physical. Denfeld is fast. Denfeld is talented. Denfeld wins by 34, 48-14.
Yeah, we discovered that Denfeld can run the football, and last night Denfeld could throw the football.
Right, that's the nice offense that they had to have dreamed of, because when you have a good running game, traditional football says if you can run, it's going to open up your pass, and Denfeld can run. We knew that. And last night they went ahead and established the run as they're wanting to do, but then they also were able to throw out of it, and Lee Brooks had a day. And if this continues for Denfeld, they will be a force. We're going to find out next week. They go to North Branch.
We really are. But again, if that team that played in the second half last night shows up, North Branch is going to have the hands full.
It'll be interesting. North Branch has already beaten Hermantown when they hosted the Hawks a couple of weeks back. Hermantown lost that game but got back on track last night. They win at Grand Rapids. Going into Grand Rapids and winning by 3 scores. Denfeld did that too. I'm really excited for those two teams to play, but it's the final week of the regular season, so we got to wait a little bit.
Yeah, and lucky for us, both of us aren't available.
Lucky or unlucky, game. I know.
Right. No, lucky for us with a tongue-in-cheek. That's going to be a great game. And here's the thing. We talked about this last night. That game could literally come down to 3 points, and one team has a kicker, and the other team seems to avoid kicking anything. And if it gets close, you give the huge advantage to Hermantown because their kicker can hit from 40 yards in, almost, unconscious. And Denfeld, we didn't see any kicking.
Absolutely. So it's fun to talk a little bit of prep football because at least there you know that a kid, for the most part, should be in the same uniform for a good number of years. Can't say that anymore with the transfer portal in college football and NIL money. And certainly in professional football, we know what free agency does, and players change uniforms all the time. And that's going to be today's opening topic, talking about the change of uniform, not the wardrobe itself. We've talked about that on the Northland Sports page here as well. But it's going to feel strange, whether or not you have withdrawal from these players or not. It's going to feel strange to see Stephon Diggs and Danielle Hunter doing what they can to defeat the Minnesota Vikings rather than assist the Minnesota Vikings. But it's certainly not the first such scenario. So what we're going to talk about today is memorable. And I like to use the word memorable because it doesn't have to mean good. It doesn't have to mean bad. Right. Just memorable former Minnesota players facing Minnesota later in their careers. Where do you want to start? Because all of the teams have a lot of scenarios, except essentially the Wild, again, have a little less because I guess they're younger than most of the teams.
Well, I think what's interesting, too, is in some of these, it's going to be our age difference. Right? Because I was talking about some earlier, and you were like, no, that doesn't make sense. I said, I was there. I remember. And so, I don't know, you want to start with the Twins? Because I think that's the greatest difference.
I think we can, and if you want to talk about age difference, I'm just going to ask you, since you stole a question earlier, and we're going to do it in buy or sell in about an hour, but I'm just going to ask you, I wasn't necessarily around when Rod Carew was a Twin at all.
Yeah.
And then I was around towards the end when Rod Carew was with the Angels, but as a longtime Twins fan, that had to be weird.
Well, the thing about it was everybody was mad at the owner, Calvin Griffith. Everybody was mad.
So the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Right. So Carew was, a guy when they traded him, everybody was like, I know the Twins aren't really good right now, and it makes sense in that way. But Rod Carew? So, yes, the first time you saw Rod Carew and Rod Carew playing regularly at first base was really, really weird to see. Yes, 100%.
So Rod Carew coming in with the Angels. For me, it was Torrey Hunter coming in with the Angels or Tigers. Eventually, obviously, he came back here to finish his career. The sentiment of that was very nice. And I think Twins fans, it's Minnesota nice. For the most part, we're very, very appreciative of what players did here, and we let them know that when they return. But Torrey Hunter not playing for the Twins was always strange for me, and then I guess at the end it felt right again.
Well, and the one that got me, and the one that started our conversation, was Bert Blyleven in Cleveland Reds.
Right.
When he wore the red uniform and pitched against the Twins, it was like, holy cow, that can't. And now Blyleven, when he left all ornery. Like the fact he came back was the bigger surprise because he burnt the place down when he left. No pun intended, Mr. Hotfoot. But that him coming back was as weird as him leaving in the first place, but that red uniform that Cleveland used to wear, top to bottom, that seeing him in that was really something.
And there were certainly a couple scenarios where Minnesota nice kind of checked out. I feel like when A.J. Pierzynski was here with the Chicago White Sox, when you combine his personality and then the team he was with, again, the Twins try to establish a rivalry that I don't always think exists, but a lot of times for a decade or so, it was, the White Sox are our chief rival. If it is now, we're in trouble. But at the same time,
right now it might be.
You factor in AJ being how he is and then being on that team. Now, granted, when he left here, it wasn't directly to Chicago. It was a trade with San Francisco. And again, that trade in Twins history is probably one of the best, if not the best. But AJ Pierzynski, we say this all the time. He's a guy that when he's on your team, all right, we got that edge to us. And when he's not on your team, we describe him with a bunch of words that unless I want this to be my last show, I can't use.
So I've got two. And one is simple, and that's Dougie Baseball in Boston. When Mankiewicz came back, he left kind of a weird spot as well.
It was a weird trade where I think the Twins were playing the Red Sox in that series.
And seeing him in that uniform. But I want to bring up one that has as much to do with the fact that we didn't do the smart thing and another team did, but that's Liam Hendriks.
Sure.
Because Liam Hendriks was here, and he was a mush ball starter. Like he was throwing crap across the plate and getting lit up. And seeing him come back in an Oakland A's uniform in the closer role.
And the White Sox again later. And
throwing 100 miles an hour.
Yep.
I mean, it's a little Louis Varland-esque if that was to happen again. But seeing him come in and just dominate, knowing that we had him in those different uniforms is always tough.
I want to finish the lack of Minnesota nice because people are probably screaming at the radio of a certain age group right now saying you're missing the most obvious when Tom Kelly had to come out on the field and say, we need to stop this. Chuck Knobloch came back with a couple different teams, with the Yankees, but I believe it was with the Royals when they were experimenting with him as an outfielder, and it was the infamous battery incident at the Metrodome. And I say incidents because batteries, plural, were being chucked on the field.
Yeah.
But I also want to ask you that question. We always hear about fans throwing something. Who's got a surplus of batteries going to a baseball game?
Well, that was his reputation with the Twins was he was the battery that got the engine going. But who put together the idea of everybody should bring batteries?
Right. That's what I mean.
That's the thing. I mean, you're pulling it out of your Walkman that you brought with back then. I mean, yeah, it's weird and it's kind of sad. It's like the beer bottle games or the snowball game in New York when everything went nuts. So it's something that we don't do a lot of, thank goodness. But that was a standout for sure.
Now, there were other memorable occurrences for me because it was people that maybe didn't live up to the hype in Minnesota. So when they played Minnesota and got knocked around, I felt a little bit relieved. Now, Matt Garza had a nice career outside of the Twins, but there were times where he would face the Twins and get tattooed a little bit. And I just want to tip my cap going, about time somebody else had to experience this. Kyle Loesch for me was the same way.
Yeah, Kyle Loesch is another guy who left, set the place on fire on the way out. So anytime he came back, it was good to see him get beat up. Scott Erickson's that guy with me. Like, I really liked Scott Erickson when he was here, and he was a Bulldog. But when he came back in Baltimore uniform, it was like, ugh. So every other team got to beat up on him later in his Twins career. Do we get to do it now?
How about Alex Colomé when we should have chosen Column B that whole season? When he comes back and blows it for someone else, there was some vindication there as well.
And my final one is Jim Eisenreich. When Eisenreich left, he left for all kinds of different reasons, right? But when he came back as a Royal, he was a different ball player, right? And so he tore the Twins up pretty good.
I think my final one would probably be Carlos Gomez because he was one of those players that you went, well, you can see so much potential, but what's going on between the ears and will he ever find it? And he did, but he didn't because the times that he was with the Brewers, again, talk about a rivalry that we try to generate that really isn't there. I understand the geographical nature of it, the border battle, basically Packer fans cheering for something else. But when they're in opposite leagues, how much do you really care about how the Twins do against the Brewers? But Milwaukee got all-star version of Carlos Gomez. For me, the Twins got Carlos Gomez at the most positive memory is that he scored on the Casilla single in game 163.
Yeah, we got the adolescent
Carlos.
We did. And
literally we did in his career, to be fair.
That's true. And Milwaukee got the adult. So I think maybe we should switch sports here, Bri. It might be easiest, like we talked about, to go to the Wild because they're the younger program, like you said. And I'll start with Cal Clutterbuck.
Yeah.
Because when Clutterbuck left, he was a fan favorite. And when he came back in an Islanders uniform, I mean, it was so weird to see. And now, of course, he's been there for so long, it's something you're used to. But the first couple times, it was like, what is he doing there? And now Dana was happy because we had Niederreiter out of the trade, but it was so weird to see him in that uniform.
For me, it was, would you get, again, the untapped potential out of a Charlie Coyle or out of a Mikhail Granlund? Because those two, you mentioned Niederreiter, and those three really were always grouped together. And it was, they were okay here, but they were never quite what was meant to be. And so every time we played them and they did something else in a different uniform, you just kind of cringed a little bit. Now, I don't want this to become the Dan Barrero, we didn't need him. It's more about, it was weird to see them playing somewhere else because they were just supposed to be ours.
Yeah, and that's with Brent Burns too. And you said Charlie Coyle. The Brent Burns trade, I know that it gets overplayed, but seeing him in a Sharks uniform, the first couple times, it was like, oh, come on, we did this. But the one that I got the feels for, of course, because I like the guy, is Darby in Colorado. Darby Hendrickson wearing a Colorado Avalanche uniform after his time in the Wild was just painful for me to watch.
Because he'd been one of ours for so long with all the Minnesota upbringing. Speaking of one of ours, I know Marian Gaborik played a ton of places, but he was basically the origin of this franchise being known to anybody outside the state. So when he played elsewhere, it looked weird.
Do you think that it mattered less because he kind of forced his way out?
Yeah, and I think that kind of strays from the topic because if we really went with guys that played here that's succeeded elsewhere and we wish we still had him. Again, that would be the Dan Barreiro, we didn't need him topic. This was when they ended up playing against us, you went, oh.
It's Fiala when we saw him play in Los Angeles the first time. Now he's a king. The first time was hard.
For me, it's multiple goaltenders. It's watching Darcy Kemper hoist a cup and you're going, yeah, you had moments here, but how did you get to this?
How did you get there?
And then for me, Dubnyk was such a turnaround for the Wild as a team in the season that he arrived and beyond that obviously we knew he went and played elsewhere, but it was just strange to go, oh yeah, we're facing Dubnyk tonight.
Pittsburgh fans are saying that about Flower in Minnesota
right now. Well, like, a lot of fans are. Vegas fans might be.
That's true. The Wolves are another team that I think it's fairly simple, but it's colorful.
Well, the obvious, most memorable one was just seeing KG in a Boston uniform. Now, I don't remember if during his cup of coffee with Brooklyn, I'm sure they played each other, but the fact that I don't remember it standing out is a little bit different.
And for me, it's Rubio coming in a Cleveland uniform looking like Charles Manson with super long hair and the beard. And
you want to talk Cleveland, I know Kevin Love's been a bit of a journeyman, but for me, the most memorable was Kevin Love with a Cavs uniform, and you're going, oh, really?
So I've got two that are much less well-known, but really were hard to see in another uniform. One is Gorgie Dang playing for Memphis.
Sure.
Right? Because while he was never a star here, he was 6th or 7th guy, and he played a lot, and he was a good guy. Everybody loved him. And the other one, very similar, Josh Okogie playing for Phoenix. You'd hear his name, and you'd be like, wait, he's playing for somebody else?
But see, that for me was kind of, again, a vindication type idea because Josh Okogie, and again, you look at the first round of the playoffs this year when Phoenix was facing the Wolves and Josh Okogie would get 5-10 minutes, and that's what Josh Okogie should be getting. Instead, he was a first-round pick that was leaned on here, and you just go, remember how bass-ackwards this front office used to be?
Yeah, no, that's true, but seeing him in a different uniform playing against us was really...
Well, seeing him still in the NBA was weird because he probably shouldn't have been there.
There's something there.
For me, as a sentimental type idea, it was the first time that I saw Wally in a Boston uniform, and I know for me it's different because I am a Celtics fan, 1A, Timberwolves are 1. But when Wally got dealt for what we called Ricky Davis, because he didn't play any D, Ricky Davis, it still looked strange to me because, again, the guys you draft and kind of nurture through their career, when they bail, it feels different.
See, similarly is Zach LaVine. And it's not just because I don't like Jimmy Butler. It's because he was the one, and even more than Carl for me, he was the one I thought was going to be a real NBA player. And when he went instead of the other guys, I was very surprised, and then, of course, Jimmy burnt the place down. But seeing him in a Bulls uniform the first time was hard.
Speaking of Bulls uniforms, I'm going to go back a little bit further because certainly I remember fans shelling out to go see this game, but it had nothing to do with the guy I'm going to bring up. It was the fact that, MJ and Scotty would come to town and play the Wolves, so the place would be full to watch them. But all of a sudden you saw Luke Longley didn't suck anymore.
Well, Luke Longley was no longer a number one option. He was number 4, and he's really good in that role.
It's amazing how Minnesota sports kind of inadvertently has that reputation. We think about guys that are 3 or 4 pitchers on a staff elsewhere, and they were asked to be an ace here.
Yes.
We're going over the Timberwolves, and guys that we said would be the lifeblood of our offense were the 4th option somewhere else.
Yeah, so let's finish with the Vikings, Brian, because I think this might be the most fun. And I'm going to start with Adrian Peterson as a Detroit Lion.
I was going to say, pick a uniform. He just looked strange whenever he was going against us because you've got that Saints game as well. That was a primetime opener when Peterson was there. Peterson in Washington, I think, might have faced us once.
Yep.
It felt like somehow wherever he was playing, they ended up on our schedule. You forget, when you look at AP's career, you go, he was an outstanding Viking. And that should be a hard stop. That should be the end of the statement. But then he ended up to be a little bit of a journeyman running back. There are a lot of teams on there. And I actually think with Washington, he had a fairly good season.
I think what's funny, I had this conversation, how come Adrian Peterson isn't in the Hall of Fame? It's because he retired last year.
Right.
Like he
can't be there yet.
Right. He's not eligible yet. Of course, my go-to is Millard in Seattle. I really like Millard.
How about when Millard was in Green Bay? That one just hurt.
Yeah, no, he is in my mind, and again, it's because I really like the guy, human being now too. He's the one guy who got away, right? He should have been better here longer. But I think the one that people my dad's age remember is Alan Page playing in Chicago.
Yeah.
Because that was a disagreement between player and team. And instead of, retiring, he went and got a job at like 230 pounds as a defensive tackle in Chicago and laid waste for a while.
Well, and I think we kind of thought that Jared Allen was going to do that when he left Minnesota, just right off into the sunset. I mean, literally, this is the cowboy type personality. Thankfully, he didn't go to Dallas and really bring that to fruition. But Jared Allen with the Panthers, Jared Allen with the Bears. I know Jared Allen wasn't originally a Viking. The Chiefs were first in his career, but seeing Jared Allen in this division elsewhere to go with the Page segue in Chicago was weird.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, he's a Ring of Honor guy, and it would have been really nice to see him retired. Retire here. But he's going to be one of those guys that someday we're going to talk about numbers that should be in the Ring of Honor or retired, with the Vikings. That's one of them.
I go to the quarterbacks for the Vikings, and let's be honest, the one that'll be weirdest is still coming. When Atlanta comes here, if Kirk is healthy and still starting and he got a great win Monday night, it's going to be awkward. And I'm really curious what kind of reception he will get, because there are plenty of haters out there that would love to boo him. There are apologists or fans of Kirk that'll probably give him the respect he deserves. The truth is probably right in the middle, but it won't be the first quarterback weirdness. Dante as a Raider, Dante as a Lion faced this team. And that was odd because you knew his best days were behind him because of the knee. You knew he was maligned here at times because of the turnovers. But I remember thinking as a hardened Vikings fan, oh, Dante's in. He'll pull this off for them somehow.
How about Gannon in Oakland?
Yeah,
I think he was a Raider in Oakland.
Right.
They've moved around now so much. But I'll tell you what Minnesota is in the quarterback world. We're the one that's weird in uniforms, because look at the guys that have come through here that belong. Warren Moon was here.
Jim McMahon. Randall Cunningham. Jeff George even. Gus Frerotte.
I mean, all these players that have come and played quarterback for Brett Favre played for us for a year. Those guys are, again, radio station someplace else is like, and weird. How about Warren Moon in a Vikings uniform?
Right. Well, and I started with the Rod Carew question.
Archie Manning in a Vikings uniform.
I've got to phrase it differently because I know he came back a la Torrey Hunter, and that's the only time you'll hear these two in sentences together. But I wasn't around for Fran's heyday. Was it weird to watch him in New York?
I wasn't around for Fran's time in New York, but I saw there was an article in The Athletic this week about Tarkington, and one of the pictures they had was of him in a Giants uniform, and it was like, oh, that doesn't even make any sense.
The other one for me, and I felt bad because I cheered against him and rather vehemently, and emotionally I shouldn't do that, but it was one of those situations where I preferred to be right. It always got under my skin that it was presumed that Teddy Bridgewater's trajectory was just going to be all world. I never saw that. Good, not great to me. Everybody says, well, the leg injury, we never got to find out. Absolutely right. But the way that we lamented, like we lost the second coming, I always thought was ridiculous. So when Teddy was starting in New Orleans, when Teddy came here and faced him with Carolina, and the Vikings beat him, when Teddy played him as a Miami Dolphin, Teddy played him a lot, and Teddy didn't do very well. And part of me kind of sat back with my arms folded going, I told you he's not that great. Now, again, when your leg virtually falls off, you probably shouldn't be, but it was a narrative that I was tired of, that, well, the Vikings had the answer at quarterback and they got a tough break. Did they or didn't they? We'll never know.
No, So his injury, I love playing fork in the road.
Yeah, and that's kind of what this is.
Yes, his injury changed the entire trajectory of the franchise, because his injury is the reason we ended up with Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins outpriced the entire roster, which made Zim, and it made the general manager implode, because one was adamant and the other one was adamant.
That's the one I'll give you. Teddy Bridgewater's injury made the Vikings hit the reset button entirely, and they went in too many different directions, and none of them turned out to be right. But to sit there and think that we had an annual Pro Bowler, whatever that means these days, in Teddy Bridgewater, I just never bought it.
He was Zim's baby, and that's the thing. Zim would have never worried about another quarterback. And actually, if you think about it, one of the players that another team, a franchise, would look at is Sam Bradford, because if Bradford plays like he played to start with, and he doesn't get hurt, I don't think we're so worried about it.
You know, the one that really got under my skin, and we could have mentioned this at the beginning because we started with the Twins, it was Tom Bernansky, because the Hur trade to St. Louis is one of the worst the Twins have ever made. I don't think Bernansky faced the Twins as a Cardinal because interleague play didn't exist then, but Tom Bernansky was in Boston, and that just looked weird. Gary Gaetti was in Boston. That looked weird. Greg Gagne was in Kansas City. That looked weird. I got to think it looks weird when you're playing against former teammates. I wonder if Chad Greenway has any stories. He's next. We're the Northland Sports Page. Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook is back. Stick around. We'll be right back, too.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Back here on the Northland Sports Page, it's not often that our intro music can also double as a PSA, but that's our PSA to Iowa punt returners. That song is called Put Your Hands Up in the Air. If you're going to signal a fair catch tonight, be very demonstrative. We want to be very demonstrative with love for our sponsors before we get to Chad Greenway. Dave Cook, go ahead.
All right, let's start with the OG, the OG Arola Architecture Studio, Hoops Brewing, ABS Auto Solutions, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance, Assisted Living Locators. You can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.org/Duluth. Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer. Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Ferguson Bath and Kitchen. The Blackwoods Group, including London Road, Tavern on the Hill, Two Harbors, and the Proctor location.
So very grateful for all of our sponsors. Always grateful when Chad Greenway has the time to join us. So many things we can talk about. It's a massive football weekend. Prime time at Huntington Bank Stadium tonight. Gophers and Hawkeyes. We know Chad will have a lot to say about that. And then Vikings and Texans, big one Sunday. Minneapolis really is kind of the place to be this weekend. Lynx playoff run starts as well. So let's get to one of my favorite people, Chad Greenway. Good morning. Happy Saturday to you.
Hey, good morning. How we doing?
Doing very well. We hope the weather is going to be doing all right. You mentioned it looks like some weather coming through down that way. I was looking out the studio window right now.
Outside.
And again, it's 10:34 in the morning. It looks 10:34 in the evening when you go by the sky right now. But hopefully all is well for what should be a good Saturday night primetime contest. I know where your heart is, but put that aside for just a moment. What do you see in this game? Because everybody says, well, Minnesota's playing Iowa. It'll be 14-10 somebody.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty typical, right? It's how these teams like to play, and I think PJ and the Gophers will like to play that way too. I think out in front, they've always had a really strong running game. Iowa's running game is really good this year as well. So I think this will kind of come down to as much as you want to believe it could be a high-scoring, fun affair. I really truly believe it will be a ground control who can who can score enough points early, get the lead, and grind the game down. I think early lead is kind of the story of the weekend. I mean, it was that way with Vikings-Niners last week. Get the lead, control the ball, control the game. I think it's the same way for the Vikings-Texans, and now the Gopher-Iowa game is the same. So I think it's just these teams aren't going to score a whole lot of points. Now, of course, we say that, and then those it'd be like 35-28 or something crazy. But I just think the style of these two coaches and how they like to play and how the teams are built. I mean, veteran O-line for the Gophers with a really good running back, explosive running back. But we'll see. Quarterback play is going to be everything. I think the RPO game for the Gophers is going to be really hard to beat for the Hawkeyes. So they have to come in and have good eyes. So the Iowa defense has been a little porous on deep balls and shots. So look for that as well.
It will be interesting, certainly. Speaking of interesting, I want to discuss the rivalry a little bit because it feels like down in the Metro, and especially among Gopher alum, Gopher students, they'll talk about this passionate rivalry with Iowa. I'm up here in Duluth on a border town with Superior, Wisconsin, and I'm going, I want to beat Iowa, but Wisconsin is the rival. And I wonder how Iowa folks look at it, because do they see Minnesota as a rival? It's got to be Iowa State first. Is this really the bridesmaid of rivalries for both?
I would say so. I would say Iowa State won for Iowa, and I think Minnesota is a way bigger rival than Wisconsin is for Iowa, just personally, just the way it's felt.
Right, but for Minnesota, I think it's Wisconsin. Am I wrong?
I agree. I think it's the same way. I would say Minnesota is probably leans toward Wisconsin, but I think Iowa's right there close. I think it's kind of for Iowa fans, it's always Iowa State, Wisconsin, Minnesota. That was the three, and then we all just hate Michigan and Ohio State together. It's just,
yeah. That brings families together every year. You're absolutely right.
So one of the questions I had for you is with the new teams coming in from the West Coast. That division didn't play a lot of defense, and it the out west, and they threw the ball a ton, and a lot of the spread concepts and whatever. How is Oregon and USC, UCLA, when they come in with their fancier offenses, how do Big Ten teams adjust to that? And then how do the West Coast teams adjust to, as you had said, older, very big offensive linemen and control football?
Yeah, I mean, usually that Pac-12 game is a little bit more of a wide open game, but I do think that they don't get as much credit for being as physical as they are as well. I mean, even when I was playing, we'd go out west and play a Pac-12 team and be like, oh, these guys are a lot more physical than we expected, and they have a creative offense and look. I think you're going to see the course of these teams change over the next 3 to 4 years as they enter this conference and the recruiting demographic changes, because all of a sudden now those West Coast teams are going to be starting to recruit Midwest, and the Midwest teams are going to start recruiting West Coast kids. And I think that dynamic's really going to change in the next few years. So it's going to be very interesting to see. I do think that it's going to be a little bit of a shock for these teams to come in here and play this brand of football over and over and over and over again over the course of a full season. And we'll see how the chips fall. But I know there's a lot of cockiness and arrogance coming from the West Coast. I think it's going to be just an easy one to come in here and act the case.
We are chatting with former Viking, former Iowa Hawkeye, Chad Greenway. Chad, we spent the first segment talking about former Minnesota professional players who went on to play elsewhere and then face Minnesota. Obviously, that's a theme with the Texans coming in, with Diggs, with Hunter, etc. You had to have faced former teammates at times. Everybody can say it's just another game, it's just another situation. But was it? How did that feel, knowing that a buddy of yours was across the way?
Yeah, it's weird. Weird to play with a guy for a bunch of years and then play against him. A lot of fun, though. I mean, this kind of creates that relationship, especially when you play in the league for so long. You start to build these relationships with different clubs, organizations, and people. Some you played with and some you didn't. And I think that was always kind of just as you kind of go through your career, like all of a sudden you're seeing these different guys and you're playing with them and against them, and it just becomes a really fun sort of fraternity of guys that just is going through this thing together, and then you get out and some of those guys are still playing. You're still cheering for those guys and just watching other careers take shape and end. So, it's a bizarre thing, but there's a real life, for those guys that leave, and depending on how they leave, you're thinking that Diggs and Danielle Hunter, those guys are kind of coming back.
Right.
They want to come here and prove, exactly what you're missing, right? And why didn't you pay me like a number one receiver? Stephon Diggs is thinking, and Danielle found his way out too with a bunch of different injuries and things, and he got paid all sorts of money, so he can't complain about that one. But at the end of the day, you still want to go prove to your ex that you still got it.
I like that analogy. That's very well said. Chad, as a former linebacker, I got to ask you about present-day Vikings. This Brian Flores defense has different guys doing just about anything from any spot. Is that a defense, as you look at it, you'd want to play for, or is it too exotic to even keep up with?
No, I love it. I mean, when Zimmer came in after playing the Tampa 2 and cover 2 system for so long, it was so fun and refreshing to play just a different system. Not that system wasn't good, but it was just fun to get creative, to look at pressures, to understand what protections are you getting from the offensive line, and then go try to combat that. It kind of a game within a game, and that really became fun to watch film and try to break down how you could beat somebody. And that's how I kind of look at this Flores defense. Is these guys are having fun. They're flying around. They're really dynamic. A lot of versatile athletes on the defense, where you kind of your traditional maybe a 4-3 or 3-4 defense is built this way, and the players look like this. Well, this is a little different with the versatility of some of these guys, like a Josh Metellus, Van Ginkel, Cashman, even, who plays more of a true backer, but still has a chance to go rush and be on the line of scrimmage. So, it's fun. It's a fun defense to watch. The guys are flying around, and again, like we could lose this game, and you look at where we're at 2-1 through 3, and be like, you know what, I'm pretty happy about it, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah, just because of the schedule we've had. Now you win this game, you go 3-0 with the schedule we've had. You're like, wait a second, like we actually have a shot to be decent here. So it'd be very, very interesting to see how this weekend plays out. I mean, this is a winnable game, but 3 weeks ago I would have looked at this game and be like, wow, this is going to be an uphill battle. But when you beat the Niners and go toe to toe with them, and didn't really play a clean game, to be honest. You say, hey, this is a winnable game for us. Let's go get it.
Brian, if you think about it, Chad was one of the original no-position guys. Like, he could rush, he could drop back, and he would be phenomenal in this defense. Chad, one of the questions I had, so we have one of the young superstar quarterbacks coming in. In a game like this, is the biggest competition the young quarterback mind versus Flores trying to confuse that young quarterback mind? I'm really interested to see how Stroud handles this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, you want to make this team one-dimensional. Anytime you get a young quarterback that's a talented quarterback, which certainly he is that, is you want to put this game completely on him. And you want to get into a situation where you can run some exotic things and give him different looks, or just sit back and play coverage and let your front four rush, because we've been proven to be able to get that done too. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the easiest thing for him to do is to hand that ball off 25 times, run for a bunch of yards, and they get out of here with a win. The hardest thing for him to do is have to beat us in the third and fourth quarter when we're pinning our ears back and getting after him because they can't run the ball. So that, to me, is just obviously a priority. I think from a Viking standpoint and how we're built, how the defense has been playing is, again, get that, good first quarter, good first drive, get 3 on the board, get 7 on the board, get a little bit of a lead, get a stop, just kind of start chipping away at it. That first drive really tells a lot and really sets the tone. So I think it is you always talk about it in football at every level, but certain games when you have the big boys coming in, you can play. You want to play out front, and that's just I think we're better that way.
Speaking of young quarterbacks, I want to piggyback off the C.J. Stroud comment because C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young will always be linked together. Right now, it looks like it's going to be about as polar opposite as Manning and Leaf were. If you're Bryce Young, where's your mind at this point in your career? Because he's in a tough spot.
Tough spot. Yeah, tough spot. I mean, the reality is you got to look at that and be like, is this something that is correctable from him physically, mentally? And does he have the actual physical tools? You talk about size, all these other things that he doesn't have, but what other intangibles did he have to be able to put him in that draft position? He's built like a Drew Brees, right? So it's like there's guys that have had success in that position before at that size, and probably he's, I'm assuming, way more athletic than like a Drew Brees or some other undersized quarterback, the kid out in Arizona. But reality is does he have that mental acuity to be able to go do that as well? And again, you don't know that unless you're in those media rooms and in that situation to really understand what makes him up. Obviously you play at Alabama, you think, okay, this kid's got to be a hard worker, got to be super talented, but is he when he's at work? Like, does he understand what concepts he's looking at? Does he get better week to week? And he just hasn't proven to do any of those things. And from an organization standpoint, to kind of pull the plug right now, I mean, just an automatic death sentence for a kid like that. I mean, just really is because you're like all these other guys, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield.
Right.
These guys are coming back, and for the second round to get another bite at the apple. You root for those guys though, because as a human, like we love a comeback story. I think we all would love to. You see a guy get really high draft pick, have all these expectations, kind of struggle, look like a flop, but man, if he can come back and do something great, like I'd be a big Bryce Young fan because you love to see humans take that lump, come back, and say, "Let me show you." And so we'll see how it all plays out. It is early, but at the same time, when you get the plug pulled like this, it means something's not right.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was Yogi Berra that said it gets late awfully early around here. And with Bryce Young, that might be the case. But we're talking football at just about every level with Chad Greenway. Of course, I mentioned every level because I recapped a bunch of prep scores in the first segment today. And the reason I'm able to do that so easily is the MN score feed. That's your baby. Tell us more.
Yeah, MN score feed, man, we're just humming along right now. I mean, obviously the fall is kicked off with volleyball and football, and the football games are almost all live scored by fans and stands now. We have a couple holes here or there, but for the most part, fans have really gotten behind this thing and seen the new things. We have players of the game now, offensive and defensive players of the game, which is a really cool add-on. You can go vote if you follow those teams. If you're at the game, you can go vote on player of the game. You can sponsor that player of the game, get some more recognition for your business. Finding some creative ways to just keep advancing the app. But at the end of the day, like, this thing is great because of our community of sports, and that's what makes it really good, and the people make it good. And it's just continue to be fun to watch it grow and get bigger, and people talk about it and see some tweets from like in Nebraska yesterday about why can't we get the high school scores rolling through the game at the Husker Illinois game last night. Things like that where we're providing a score feed, right, for people that just the everyday person that wants to just go check on high school football. It's pretty dang cool. And once people get their hands on it, man, they love it.
I do love it, absolutely. Like you said, it's great for our sports community. Speaking of sports community, how did you have any time for us today? Because with your daughters, you're constantly busy, right, within your sports community. Yeah,
we're soccer mode right now. I got all 4 playing at some levels. I got 2 playing high school. I got 1 playing 11U, 1 playing 9U, and we actually don't have a game till this afternoon, so I had a little bit of a break here in the schedule. And a cousin had the audacity to get married today, so I'm going to a wedding. On Gopher Hawkeye Day, I'll be at a wedding, and my phone will be on. I'll be streaming that thing. My wife will be slapping me in the back of the head, but I have to watch it, see how it goes.
Brian, I think I saw a Mayhem commercial of that exact thing the other day where the one guy isn't paying attention to anything
Right.
but the football game at a wedding. I like that.
I just say I'm relieved
Yeah, it's
that.
going to be me. I'll somebody take a picture of me and send it to you guys so you can just use it on social.
Yeah, do that, because I was going to say, I think I'm glad they don't do, if anybody objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. I can hear you if something happens going, yeah! Wait, no, don't break up the wedding. You don't want to do that. But with a schedule like yours, I got to think at times you just want to kick back with a beverage. You know me. I'm not doing my job if we don't talk Grey Duck as well before I let you go.
Yeah, it's been a fun year for us. Just some new products coming again. So we keep launching new stuff. We have a really exciting thing happening. We actually went to Kentucky and bought some bourbon barrels.
Nice.
And we're rolling out a bourbon. It's coming. Like in about 3 weeks, we'll be rolling this thing out, which is going to be super exciting. But Grey Duck itself has been awesome. A lot of growth this year. In year 5, we've had the biggest growth curve we've ever had in our 5-year history this year. So I think people are buying it in. People are loving it. They're seeing it more places. They're asking for it more places. We're in more bars and restaurants. And I think it's fun to see, the ups and downs and the swales and the highs of a business. And just fun to see, people really get behind it.
Absolutely. It's great to see it grow. The fun part of Vikings football is when they do poorly, it drives me to drink. When they do well, I celebrate with a drink. Either way, I find an excuse to partake in Grey Duck spirits. Yes, it's a win-win, no doubt. Speaking of win, tell me who wins tomorrow and who wins tonight. Give me a Gophers Iowa prediction with a score and a Vikes-Texans prediction with a score.
Well, I got to go Homer on both. I'm going to go Hawkeyes. I have to. It's in my blood.
Right, I get it.
But I do think it's going to be one of those classics. These games have been so fun to watch these last few years. I win. It's going to be a field goal at the end. We're going to somehow complete a pass, probably in the second half, maybe. Get in field goal position and kick that thing. And then Vikings, I like us. I like us at home. I like us to go 3-0. I'm excited about what we're doing. I think it's again, every NFL game comes down to a possession here. There's a 4-point win for us. Probably something like 27-23.
Everybody remember to take deep breaths during both of those games. Chad, I say this somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but obviously the best to your family. Enjoy the wedding, but try to make the most of the sports weekend. Bumping you out with a little earth, wind, and fire. Thanks for spending your 21st of September with us. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. That's former Viking linebacker Chad Greenway, but that's one way to describe him. There's about 17.
How about not paying attention to Chad's life when you set up your wedding? Like you set up your wedding during Minnesota, Iowa, man. I think you should have at least checked.
I was going to say, everybody's got that cousin that they don't really look at all the time. For Chad, that might be the one today.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
True.
We wish everybody the best. Speaking of the best, Dave Hoops is next. He's got some of the best beer in town. Stick around. We'll be right back. A little George Thorogood. That one's called One Bourbon, One Scotch, One Beer. I'll tell you what, if I'm going to have one beer, it's going to be from Hoops Brewing. But if I summarize my weekend, or even today, it might be one Coca-Cola, one Grey Duck, one Hoops beer. I'll write my own song. Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook. The song that we sing every Saturday is the Northland Sports Page. We can't do it without our great sponsors.
Absolutely. Let's start with the Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, Tavern on the Hill, Two Harbors, and the location in Proctor, Ferguson Bath and Kitchen, Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Krause Heating and Cooling, your carrier, HVAC authorized dealer, Assisted Living Locators. You can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.org/Duluth. Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance, Kohler Hyundai and Kohler Toyota, Advantage Gentleman Screen Printing, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, ABS Auto Solutions, Arola Architecture Studio, and the proprietor, Hoops Brewing.
Hoops Brewing, the mastermind behind it is Dave Hoops, and he's with us by phone as he is just about every Saturday. Hoops, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you. A really nice segment there beforehand. And, looking forward to a good sports day as always.
Yeah, Chad is a bundle of energy, and I think he's looking forward to it too, but that darn wedding got in his way. Dave and I were still joking about that during the commercial break, but yeah, you've got kind of the pick of the litter of good sporting events this weekend. Obviously, the two football games are probably in the spotlight with Gophers, Iowa, Vikings, Texans, but the Twins are right in the thick of it, whether or not you have faith left or not. Knowing you the way I do, Dave Hoops, I'm going to assume that you do. and then the Lynx in the playoffs. That's going to be big as well.
And a wild crank out with a preseason.
If you put value on the preseason, don't comment on that yet either, because Dave Cook is stealing all the buy or sells so far. But Dave Hoops, this kind of sports weekend at a brewery, that's a big deal.
Well, for sure. And, yeah, you should have faith, first of all. That was probably the best win of the year that the Twins put together last night. And I watched it, the whole thing. 20 strikeouts. It's beautiful. They just refused to lose after all those one-loss games in Cleveland. And, you realize this, you guys. If KC loses today and the Twins win, they're all the way back into second spot. And I'll be down there next weekend watching them when they're clinching. It's go Twins.
I was going to say I would prefer that, and radio is not a visual medium, but the action that Dave Cook just did would be the Twins clinching or clenching, because right now you couldn't tell the difference because the way that Cleveland series went, a lot of could have been that turned into devastating losses. But I'm glad you said what you said, because if we're going to sweat the charging Tigers being a game behind us and say that's too close, you got to do it the other way too and say, but we're very close to being in that second spot. It's a half empty, half full. I feel like that's the perfect question to ask a Brewer, isn't it?
It is, and everybody forgets that we own the tiebreakers.
Yes.
We own them. So we've got another extra game in hand. And so, yeah, I'm a half-full kind of guy, 100%.
I appreciate that as well. Speaking of half full, let's just go ahead and call it full, because the first 2 weeks for the Vikings have sure looked that way. We all had it's the Giants. Let's see what they can do against real competition. Well, we saw. Yes, it was a 6-point game as far as the final score. But to say the Vikings dominated the Niners would be entirely accurate. Easy for me to say. Let's try that again. The Niners. But again, it was a Viking dominant victory.
Well, you know who I picked. And, it's, of course. And I like being right. Fortunately, I was wrong on the score. It was only a 6-point win.
Right.
But, yeah, I'm looking for more of the same tomorrow. Very excited about it.
Should be a good game with Stephon Diggs returning, Danielle Hunter returning, Cam Akers returning, and then on our side you got Jonathan Grenard saying I used to play over there, Blake Cashman saying I used to play over there. There's plenty of fits, if you will.
Well, I think one of the things, Dave, we saw last weekend is something we haven't seen for a while, and that's the Vikings took punches and threw punches. That was a very physical football game, and we haven't been overly physical over the last few years.
No, not at all. But, again, it's going to be about quarterback pressure in this game on both sides. And, and both of these teams are leading the league in that whole stat. I think the Vikings are going to have a really good game. I think that my X factor is not a major thing to say, but I think Collins is their X factor. No Mixon. I'm really impressed with his game. And can we, keep him in check? It's the question.
I think that is a great question. The other one for me, and this is a little bit more of an intangible question, is we always talk about victim of expectations. We're hard on teams that are supposed to be great and then are just good when good is still good, but we're hard on them, again, because of the expectations. The expectations for the Vikings for the season were almost nothing. All of a sudden now in week 3, you're hearing a lot of people going, you know what, I like the Vikings in this game. Barely was that said during the Giants game. It wasn't said during the Niners game. Minnesotans are hardened with heartbreak. Should we be fearful at all that now people are starting to warm up to this team, or just take it and go?
No, we should be fearful that the first bad game Darnold has, everybody's going to unload on him.
Yes.
And I'm watching a guy with the brain power to work with probably the greatest quarterback coach in the league and play this game. He has the physical skills. So, yeah, he's not going to have every game is not going to be a W or a perfect, but let's just not get down on him. I've been hoping all year that he'd play all year. I said that before the season.
Yep,
let JJ sit, and let's hope that continues, and let's just stay positive and believe in our team. How about it?
And I want to ask you guys this as I look across at Dave Cook's North Star sweatshirt. Yes, it's a North Star sweatshirt, but as I look at him, it just screams the green and gold to me. So I'm trying not to think about the Packers, but it actually gives me a good question. Green Bay has been the gold standard organizationally for quarterbacks for 2-3 decades. Are we going to start to see more of the plan of sitting guys for 2-3 years behind somebody before you throw them out there? Because we talked about Sam Darnold hopefully playing all season because it would mean he's succeeding. Obviously now it almost has to happen because of the McCarthy injury. But then you look at J.J. McCarthy and he hasn't played for obvious reasons. He'd still be tied for most touchdown passes by a rookie quarterback right now because Caleb Williams doesn't look good. Drake May doesn't look good. Bo Nix doesn't look good. Are we going to start to see Bryce Young obviously is on the bench in year 2? Are we going to start to see teams sitting guys for longer, even if they're drafted in the top 5, top 10?
I think, Brian, what you're looking at is when teams that are drafting somebody to save a franchise, there's a reason, right? If you look at the Packers example, where have they gotten these quarterbacks? One was a trade, and the other one with Aaron Rodgers, he's drafted 24th. He
slipped to 20, yeah.
And
Jordan Love was around 20. There too, yeah.
And so this is a quarterback who needed to grow, and it was behind a good team.
Right, but when you look at J.J. McCarthy drafted 10th and Sam Darnold being in front of him as a guy you shrugged your shoulders about, the Vikings still had a plan, it seemed, to have J.J. McCarthy be QB2.
Yep.
So maybe instead of the Packers, are the Vikings the pioneers of going, go ahead and draft a guy in the top 10, but I wouldn't play him right away still?
I think that's logical.
I think it depends on the team. The Packers are unfair because they managed to be healthy enough to sit these guys. I'll tell you, Penix is going to be playing instantly if Kirk gets hurt or even goes downhill. It's about the team. They're not going to play Drake May until Jacoby gets injured. He didn't play that well the other night.
Right.
It's about the team. If you're fortunate enough to have that guy in the background and you have the coaching and the team around it, so you can let him sit even through some wins and some major losses. That's obvious. Somebody like Bo Nix. Peyton loves him. He's going to give him time. Was he ready? Clearly not.
Well, and I think that's, for me, kind of the overwhelming theme. I understand what you're saying, but I'm just wondering because, again, it's worked very well for one franchise, and yes, circumstances have lent itself to it. Is there just going to be a plan of there's too much of an NFL learning curve, don't throw guys to the wolves, give them a year or two to learn regardless? I think it's an idea worth exploring now, but speaking of learning, we always learn things from your questions. Dave Cook, you're back. I had to play your role last week. Dave Hoop said I did okay.
Dave, I got a question for you before we start because Brian's not going to have anything to say about this. I want to know what the furthest tap is from Duluth of Hoops Brewing. Like, how far away can you get it?
Minneapolis, Town Hall Brewery, right there by the U.S. Bank Stadium is the furthest away. It's run by this, fledgling brewer named Mike Hoops. You might have heard of him.
The family name is familiar.
You can go down there and get it.
All right. So here's my first question, guys. We're going to go with football to start. And Brian has talked about me stealing questions. He kind of stole this one, but we're gonna ask it anyway. So over the last decade or so, there have been 3 really gigantic NFL draft quarterback busts, and I want you to rank them for me. So we got Bryce Young, which just happened here a little bit ago, and his numbers are so bad, I don't know if he can come back from it. Ryan Leaf or Jamarcus Russell? Which one of the 3, or rank them, I guess, if you want, are the biggest busts?
I guess I'm proud of myself that until you listed them, I would have been fine because those were the 3 names I had. But go ahead, Dave Hoops. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I would have interrupted the question with a 99% Leaf with 1% on those other 2 guys. He's the colossal of busts. It's beautiful how bad he was. It was sad. I liked him.
I'm going to go with Jamarcus Russell as actually the biggest bust, only because Ryan Leaf wasn't said to be the savior of that quarterback class. There was a guy taken in front of him who was. Jamarcus Russell, to me, although we talk about certain franchises are where careers go to die, I'm not so sure that the Raiders weren't it at that point either. Ryan Leaf would be second. Bryce Young, you took a shot and it failed. I don't know that I label him a bust yet.
Boy, I don't know, man. They traded the world to go move up and get him.
Right.
And his numbers are catastrophically bad.
But in 5 years when he's playing for the Rams and lighting it up like Baker Mayfield is for the Bucs, we'll be shrugging our shoulders.
Let's hope. All right, so let's go away from sports for a second. I had this question in Denver, and I want to ask you guys. It's breakfast. Are we ordering pancakes, waffles, or French toast?
Ooh, they're all good. That's tough. Do we get to rank those too?
Sure.
What was it, pancakes,
waffles,
or
French toast?
I guess waffles I'm going with, just because they're more interesting than pancakes.
That's fair. What would you put at 2 and 3 if you ranked all 3?
Pancakes, number 2, for sure.
All right, so French toast loses in your world. In my world, French toast is number 1 because I think it can vary and be very flavorful, and I don't have it very often. Waffles is 2. Waffles are delicious. Pancakes are too. There's something about pancakes, and this will sound very weird, but when has that ever stopped me before? There's something about pancakes after you have a few, I feel like I need to shower all over again. So pancakes would be 3rd for me because it just, to me, it resonates with, well, today's not going to be anything. I'm going to be lazy all day.
It's gluten-free, Dave, right? And gluten-free bread is tough tough to make anything with. So French toast for me is last. Waffles are first, and really because of Superior Waffles across the way. Cal makes really good stuff there that I can eat. Gluten-free pancakes are so rare, good ones are, that it's 1 and 1A for me. So those two, and then French toast a distant third. And Brian, I've got others, but I think we'll skip the rest today.
We are a little pressed for time this week. We'll make it up to you next week, Dave Hoops. But first of all, give us a good reason to go to the brewery this weekend. There are always several.
Well, we were talking beforehand about the fruit beers, and it's interesting because the blueberry wheat, which I know you're a big fan of, has been a huge success, and that's fun. But it's kind of an accidental, just orgy of fruit beers, to coin a phrase. It's blueberry, raspberry, peach and pear is just on the way out, but it's still there. Chili pepper, and this week apple, which is really great. Fresh Bayfield Press. And plus, we have a whole bunch of German beers, especially brand new Hefeweiss and brand new Munich Lager, and then our really tasty Oktoberfest melding into October 5th. Saturday is our giant Oktoberfest celebration. So beer, and of course, sports. And we're going to be really glued to that Twins game today at 3 o'clock. Pedro's pitching. Let's go.
That would be Pablo, but he is our Pedro, no doubt about it. You, Dave, cooked that a little bit, but I loved it. Sports, beer. Can't find a better combination. You make a great combination with us. Thanks for your time again this Saturday.
Thanks, guys. Have a really good Saturday.
You as well. That's our guy, Dave Hoops. It's high time that you get to Hoops Brewing anytime you get the chance. He just mentioned why. That's like a trifecta for me. Order the apple, order the raspberry, order the blueberry, and hey, if you got time, peach and pear.
It's just amazing how Dave continues to churn out winners.
Absolutely. We got a winner of a second hour. Lots of guests. Chris Mallett with rookie basketball will be first. We'll play buy or sell after that. And Vince Glenn. Oh, we might have a Viking thing or two to say. Stick around. We'll be right back.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.